Lily, I need you to focus.
I can't tell. He sees soldiers. They think he's dying.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome again to my channel, Film Flicks and Comics, where we talk all things movies, TV and comics, and of course, Marvel and everything related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And today, we're doing our weekly recap of Marvel's WandaVision. Episode 6 is up, so let's get to it. WandaVision pretty much blew the Marvel Cinematic Universe wide open in last week's epic installment, so it felt like an extra long week for Episode 6 to drop. We returned to the sitcom town of Westview after Wanda and Vision got a most unexpected visitor, her late brother Pietro, but a version from the X-Men universe, or so we thought. We opened the episode with a 90s theme Malcolm in the Middle style intro, accompanied by a punk rock anthem. In this intro, we see the twins use a 90s era appropriate handheld camera as they take us through the chaos in the Maximoff household. One thing intriguing though is that Agnes is again shown as part of the family, bolstering our theory that she's a very important character and that she's somehow partly independent of Wanda's control in this pocket reality. The boys wake up their man-child Uncle Pietro on the couch, who proceeds to use his soup speed to play with his nephews. Wanda suddenly comes down the stairs wearing a classic Scarlet Witch costume for the holidays, a definite nod to the original Scarlet Witch costume in the comics. In the scene, she claims she's a Sokovian fortune teller, leading Pietro to prompt a humorous flashback of their childhood Halloween, receiving fish as a treat instead of sweets. But Wanda doesn't quite remember it that way, and the twins, breaking the fourth wall by talking directly to the audience, make note that her mom hasn't been herself since their Uncle Pietro showed up at her doorstep. Pietro has slipped into the role of cool uncle beautifully, but seems to have the memories of MCU Pietro rather than the ones of the Fox X-Men universe that match his face. This clearly ends any theory or notion of a different multiverse version of Pietro. All indication point to the fact that what we're seeing is still the Pietro of old, but that his physical form is different because Wanda is trying to avoid the feeling of grief, hence the different versions of his brother. He also clearly doesn't remember that he sacrificed himself in the Avengers Age of Ultron by dashing in front of Hawkeye, who just saved the kid, as Ultron fired a hail of bullets. Vision then walks down the stairs, also decked out in comic book costume. As the couple observe Pietro blend well with the twins, Vision reveals he's not joining the Halloween festivities to patrol as part of the neighborhood watch. Of course, Wanda's not pleased that her husband seems to be deviating from her plan again. But just like in previous episodes where there seems to be a budding confrontation between our two heroes, an intermediary always comes in, and normally it's Agnes, but this time it's Pietro who steps in to defuse the situation. The mediary situation may be somewhat a form of control of Wanda or whoever else has control of this pocket reality, in that I believe it's somehow a way to keep Vision in check by distracting him. The scene ends when Vision leaves and Pietro, together with his nephew Tommy, puts on their costume, and lo and behold, we have Quicksilver in his classic comics costume with matching hair to boot. We suddenly cut outside the bubble of Westview as we see soldiers bringing in the missile used by Director Hayward in his attempt to eliminate Wanda. This missile is still glowing with Wanda's powers, and it's good to note that after a rewatch of the previous episode, the missile had a Stark Industries marking, signifying that S.W.O.R.D is still using Iron Man tech in its operations. Monica, Agent Wu, and Darcy Lewis confront Hayward about his unsuccessful attempt to kill Wanda, and the Sword Head refuses to relent despite the unknown of what happens to the town should Wanda die. Monica reasons that Wanda can be both the problem and the solution, but Hayward chalks her attitude up to her affinity with superpowered individuals and even mentions Captain Marvel again and blames the people who disappeared for still being optimistic while pointing to the fact that those who were left, like him, had to do whatever it takes to keep the lights on. This seeming negative attitude towards superheroes, similar to that of Baron Zemo in Captain America Civil War, seemed to point to a traumatic experience of the director during the 5 years before everyone got brought back by the snap. Maybe a feeling of betrayal and feeling of abandonment, as our beloved heroes were not much present during the said 5-year period. The director proceeds to then kick the trio out. We then see Jimmy in action for the first time as they dispatch the S.W.O.R.D goons so that they can proceed with their investigation. The scene then cuts back to sitcom mode where we see Wanda, Pietro, Tommy, and Billy take to the streets. Pietro shouts,
"Unleash hell, demon spawn!"
definitely a reference to the comic version of the twins being made out of the shards of the soul of Mephisto. Anyway, as the twins run off, the other two talk about Pietro's different look, and how his presence both serve as a reminder of the past, and yet he looks different so as to avoid being a reminder of the grief brought about by the events of the past. As the twins and Pietro leaves Wanda, they mention Kick-Ass, a meta-reference to the movie both starred in by the young Aaron Taylor and Evan Peters. More importantly though, Wanda, through Herb, learns that Vision lied about his neighborhood watch patrol. The scene again breaks the fourth wall, like in the previous episode with Agnes when Herb asks,
"Is there something I can do for you, Wanda? Do you want something changed?"
This again bolsters our theory that he and Agnes are somewhat in the know of what's happening in the bubble. The next scene shows Vision observing the oddities around the neighborhood. As Vision gets further away from Wanda, he finds the townspeople going in loops or just standing still, perhaps hinting at the limit of her influence. One woman has a tear running down her face, suggesting that her true, traumatized self is close to the surface, which is pretty horrible. I believe this is again a stark reminder of what he discovered last episode with Norm, that people are trapped underneath the characters Wanda cast them as, and that they're scared and they want to break out. This week's commercial takes us into the world of claymation as a surfing shark provides a starving kid with Yo Magic yogurt. Unfortunately, despite it being billed as a snack of survivors, the child isn't able to open the yogurt. This, I believe, makes a representation to the fact that although Wanda can control everyone with her magic, that the magic is not enough to sustain them, that they will eventually die. As many fans have theorized, not only did the commercials point out to the specific grief in Wanda's life, they also point to the representations of Infinity Stones, namely, the toaster light blinking in yellow just like the Mind Stone in Vision's head, the wristwatch commercial referring to time clearly in reference to the Time Stone, the blue Hydra Soak soap in reference to the Tesseract or Space Stone experimented by Hydra, the Lagos paper towel wiping the red juice referring to Red Ether or the Reality Stone, and lastly in this commercial with the island and the bones representing Boromir and the Red Skull, of course in reference to the Soul Stone. So if the theories are correct, then we will most probably expect another commercial in the next 3 episodes that would represent the only missing stone left, the Power Stone. Back in Westview, Wanda and Pietro argue about Pietro being a bad influence to the twins. Pietro reveals that he's just doing his part by creating tension with Vision, stir up trouble with the twins, and ultimately give her grief, which he said is what Wanda ultimately wanted. Wanda in her confusion asked his brother about what happened to his accent, and his brother answered by asking her the same. Pietro explains that he can't remember details except that he was shot in the street, and the next thing he knows, Wanda was calling her. Does this mean that Pietro is being used by something or someone else to steer Wanda to his or her own desired scenario? This conversation seems to give credence to Wanda's claim, and our theory, that Wanda is not entirely in control of Westview. But who summoned Pietro? And to what direction is he pointing Wanda to go? I'm sure we'll find out soon as we have only 3 episodes left in the series, which to be honest with you sucks. Anyway, going back to the scene, Wanda and Pietro is interrupted by the twins. As Tommy shows off his newly found super speed, Wanda warned the twins not to go past Ellis Avenue, which we will later find out is the part of town where the edge of her bubble ends. Back outside the bubble, our trio sneaks back into HQ, taking notice of the scene in the sitcom that just happened again, emphasizing that although it's Pietro, it's the wrong brother. Darcy hacks Hayward's devices and discovers that Director Hayward found a way to ping Vision by tracking the decay signature of Vibranium. But why only Vision? This gives us a clue that the real interest of Director Hayward is only Vision. My theory is that Director Hayward is intent in eliminating Wanda because he wants to get back Vision so he can again experiment on his search for new AI weapons, which he believes to be more reliable than our beloved superpowered individuals. Jimmy also takes note of life signs near the edge of town which seem to be standing still, which as we explained earlier is an indication that Wanda's limiting the use of her influence in that she only uses those characters that are essential to their family situation. Shedding his costume, Vision finds Agnes stopped in her car. At first, she seemed frozen like the others, but then she creepily starts speaking, saying that she got lost getting to the town square. Vision does his mind control release thing and she appears to come out of character, and she's grateful to meet an Avenger, to which Vision had no idea about. She also drops a bomb on Vision, revealing he's dead. When Vision says he intends to take them out of Westview, she laughs maniacally, saying Wanda won't let any of them leave. And as Vision does his mind control release again, Agnes seems to get back into character and just magically forgets and pulls away. This scene for me is very telling. As I mentioned earlier, it was quite unusual that Agnes could speak while the others cannot. I believe Agnes was just faking the whole being in its spell thing, that she's actually trying to sway Vision to get out of the bubble. It definitely feels like a hint at some grander plan. But it's unclear if she's the masterminder of the puppet. I will get back to this later. As Darcy continues her hacking of S.W.O.R D's network, Monica gets a call from her aerospace engineer guy who can get her back into the Hex. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Are we going to see in the next episode Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four? This cameo will surely make every fan bonkers if this ever comes true. Anyway, Darcy pushes back to their plan to re-enter, saying Monica's previous trips has already rewritten her cells on a molecular level twice, definitely hinting at Monica's acquisition of superpowers. Monica insists to proceed as she is intent in helping Wanda. Darcy volunteers to stay behind to continue the hack on Hayward, while Monica and Wu grab a S.W.O.R D jeep to meet their guy. Back in the town square, Wanda and Pietro look over the Halloween celebration. They talk about their parents before Pietro breaks the fourth wall by asking where she's been hiding all the children, commending his sister on not traumatizing the children beyond the occasional holiday episode cameo. He's surprisingly impressed at Wanda's use of her powers and asks her how she was able to do it. She confides in him that she doesn't know how she created the reality and says that
I don't know how I did it.
suddenly, she sees a version of the Pietro who died full of bullet holes, just the same way he saw Vision's body ripped off the Mind Stone back in episode 4. Again, this seeming confession of Wanda tells us that although she created the bubble, she doesn't exactly remember how, which points to a third person, again maybe Mephisto, trying to influence her to create this pocket reality. As Darcy continues her hack, she finds a secret file with the code name Cataract. Cataract in medical terms is a condition in which a cloudy area forms in the lens of the eye, leading to a decrease in vision. Get it? Blocking Vision's vision. When Wanda gets flashes of dead Vision and Pietro, their white eyes resemble cataracts. And as I mentioned earlier, the prevailing theory now is that Hayward has been experimenting on Vision all along so he can produce new weapons, and that his one and only concern is to get rid of Wanda so he can bring Vision back to the base and continue on with his experiments. Meanwhile, Darcy and Hayward observe Vision reaching the border of the Hex bubble. He pulls himself through the boundary, only for himself to begin to be torn apart. He appears to be reverting to the form he was in when Wanda broke into the S.W.O.R D facility and stole his body, rather than the corpse left behind after Thanos pulled the Mind Stone out of his head in Avengers Infinity War. Suddenly, Billy hears his father's voice in his head, a definite manifestation of his own psychic powers similar to that of her mom's. As a pleading Darcy is restrained, Vision tells them, before collapsing. Billy tells his mom what he's seeing, and Wanda suddenly stops time. She begins to expand the Hex, bringing Vision back in the bubble and saving his life. Unfortunately, this also means several S.W.O.R D agents, including Darcy, have been swept up in the magic of the bubble. Despite previous dialogue about Wanda's dealings being relatively harmless, the end of the episode makes one thing clear. She's a problem whose powers pose a threat to more than just a small town. We're definitely facing an Avengers level threat now. Going back to what we discussed earlier about Agnes, I believe that Agnes was provoking Vision to get out the bubble, knowing he would begin to die, and that Wanda senses this, she would expand the bubble to save his life. Remember when Monica tried to defend Wanda by saying she might be limiting the scope of the bubble to save the rest of the world? That pronouncement might be true that although Wanda created this bubble, all she wanted was to get rid of her feelings of greed creating her own Shangri-La. On the other hand, the puppeteer, and now definitely I believe that there's someone influencing her, is using her so she can use her powers to not only create powerful children, like we mentioned in our earlier review, but more importantly to cover the whole world in this seeming mindless bubble. Again, as we have answered a lot of questions, we're again, and I'm surprised, confronted with new ones. The next important question now is, are any of our remaining Avengers now aware of the impending threat? Will we see Captain Marvel go back to Earth and face Wanda to stop the seeming invasion? Is Doctor Strange now aware that the very reality he's protecting is now under threat? Saying all these possibilities just makes me shake my head in disbelief of how much we should be thanking those people in Marvel for giving us such an exciting series. And just like in the endings of our previous videos, I can't wait to watch where WandaVision will bring us next. Thank you guys for watching my video, and we're all looking forward to episode 7. If you liked the video, please smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again, and till the next video.